Hello class, and welcome to Module 9. Last week we discussed emotions and the role mindfulness can play in helping us manage our emotions. In this module, we're going to again look at our emotions but focus on compassion and kindness. If you remember, the author discusses or believes that of the 4 leadership excellent components, compassion is the most transformative for the individual, organization, and community. And as we go through this module and digest this information, I want you to begin to process and think about, why the author believes this, and also whether or not you agree with this. When we think about compassion and kindness, it links back to our emotions and that idea that it's okay to embrace our emotions. And as we talked last week, that's kind of a goal with mindfulness, is to embrace those emotions. The challenge is that we often struggle to acknowledge or embrace our own difficulties. And in fact, we tend to ignore or deny those difficult parts of our lives. And from a leadership perspective, we must be willing to embrace our weaknesses, our own difficulties, so that we can develop strategies to address this. We all have our weaknesses, and hopefully we are able to identify those and work to strengthen those. Oftentimes we tend to hide in our strengths and not really focus on our weaknesses. Well, for example, you may say, I'm really good at this aspect of my life, so I'm going to focus more time and energy and not really worry about some of those weaknesses. A great example of hiding in our strengths and not necessarily focusing on our weaknesses was the example in the book of Matthew and how he handled the death of his brother-in-law. And he was focused on fixing the situation and ignored his emotions. And he just went into the zone where that's what he focused on. And that can be easy for us to do, especially under stress, but we need to take time for ourselves and actually embrace our emotions and learn to handle those difficult situations. So when we think about compassion, the definition for compassion is understanding others' suffering and having a desire to alleviate that suffering. And it starts with self-compassion. Before we can help others, we have to have self-compassion for ourselves. And as we've talked about in this course, that can be difficult to do when we don't take time for ourselves. But ideally, once we do that, we can begin to help others. I always like to pose this question in regards to our work environment. And, do you work in a environment that is compassionate? And if you do, that's amazing and that's awesome. If you don't, we'll give a couple techniques here that you can help change that maybe. But think about how that impacts the morale of your organization if you have compassion as compared to if you do not. And when we combine mindfulness with compassion, we are able to see our situation clearly and show ourselves compassion. We can become aware of those around us, what they need from us, and what we need from them. A major way, or a simple way, I would really argue, that we can show compassion in the workplace is through kindness. There's a great example in the book of Colin Powell discussing kindness, and it deals with a parking lot and how the cars are parked in the parking lot. And I don't want to give away the whole story, but the point of the story is that a simple act of kindness can have a huge impact. And this could be something as simple as a compliment, a word of encouragement, a kind word. It does need to be genuine when you're doing it, but it's amazing the impact that can have. It can have a ripple effect and truly be transformative and can change the culture of an organization just by being kind and showing compassion to others. I happened to come across this note from my daughter, and she wrote it back when she was probably 7. And it says, "How I bring others joy with sound." And her answer was, "How I bring others joy with sound is I compliment kids, teachers, adults, and that gives them joy." And it's pretty interesting. Here was a 7-year-old girl writing this, and you don't realize how true that really is. And if you don't believe that, next time you're at work, just give somebody a compliment and just look at their reaction, how they light up, and the impact that can have on them. And you never know when one little act of kindness, the impact, the ripple effect that can have on someone else's day or the culture of an organization. A technique that we can use to focus on kindness, it's a kindness exercise. It's similar to meditation, but instead we are going to focus on kindness. And there are 4 questions that we need to ask ourselves as you're doing this exercise. The first one is, may I feel safe from physical and emotional harm? May I feel strong and healthy? May I feel happy? And may I live with ease, meaning clarity and composure. And as you go through this process, focus on how you feel when asking these questions. What are your emotions? What are your sensations as you go through this process? And once you've gone through that, next, you can try this technique while thinking of someone else. Remember, we have to first start with self-compassion, so focus on ourselves. Then try this technique thinking about someone else. It could be a loved one, somebody who's important in your life, and you ask those same questions. After you go through that, you can even try doing that with someone who you dislike or that you don't get along with. And it's amazing to feel the emotions that come out as you work through that process. So give that a shot. Embrace that. I think you'll enjoy. As we wrap up this module, as you read through the course material, listen to the lecture, reflect on compassion and kindness, I argue they are critical for leaders. I think if you go back to our author and how she talked about compassion being the most important or most transformative component of leadership excellence, I certainly believe her and agree with her stance on that, and it can truly transform a work environment. I always like to use the example of my wife works at a elementary school, and there is compassion and kindness in abundance, and you feel it when you walk in. You can see it with the interaction that the teachers and the students have, and you can tell people care for each other. And because of that, there's a family atmosphere where everybody's looking out for each other, everybody's trying to help each other, and that can truly change the lives of the educators in there and the students. And it's just amazing to see. Looking at our kindness meditation exercise, I hope you embrace that process. And as you work through that, again, focusing on ourselves and working our way out, as I reflect on, I just come away thinking that's really all we want out of life. All of us want to be able to have those, be able to answer those 4 questions. And if we can do that, we're in a pretty good spot. And then finally, just show a little kindness. I'm sure we already do that, but it's amazing the impact that can have on someone else, on your workplace, just showing a little bit of kindness.